Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag where I answer your questions, hot takes, observations, and ultimately your comments about tennis or anything else. Comments are left under my YouTube post or on my 24/7 Discord or sometimes as an Apple Podcast review, which I don't think we have any of this week. But it is great to be back doing a regular mailbag. It's been a long time, especially because the last mailbag felt a little bit different. It was all about Sinner and Wada, and then a couple of other things have come up since then. So yeah, good to get back on this. It has been a long time. I'm recording this on Monday, 10:17 Pacific time. So we are into third round play now, the first day of third round play. Mahac has just beaten Opelka. Zverev and Jordan Thompson are in the middle of a second set. Just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at as I'm recording this. Obviously, the first two rounds of the Miami Open, particularly days 3 and days 4, where the seeds played their opening matches, full of carnage. And a couple days ago, it was after day 3 of the event, Medvedev lost in the day session, Alcaraz lost in the night session, and it was like, okay, whoa, this is quite the start to the tournament. You think about the overall landscape and how just wide open it has the potential to be. I went on Twitter X and I just threw the question out into the universe. Who do you think is going to win the Miami Open on the men's side? Who's going to win? I was curious the range of responses, and I got 19 different names. 19. The most popular answer, tied with Djokovic, was Jack Draper, who lost the next day. The third most popular answer, somewhat surprisingly, but still, was Ben Shelton. Him and Zverev both got 7 responses. Shelton lost the next day. Rune lost as well the next day to Riley Opelka. So, Djokovic is still in. Zverev is still in. If those guys lift the trophy at the end of this one, it obviously wouldn't be such an earth-shattering result, but the potential is certainly there. We'll see how the week progresses. But with that, let's get into the comments. A ton about Alcaraz and what's happening here. So we'll discuss that for sure. And the first comment is from Mr. RS Raftery. I don't know. Anyway, I've been patient with the trajectory of Alcaraz and his inconsistency due to his age and his success. However, it finally seems like he is regressing and his confidence seems shaken. He seemed to be on a much higher level in 2022-23. in the first half of last season. Is it time to worry, or am I expecting too much? How can he be more consistent and not lose to lower ranked players early in big tournaments? What does he need to change? Is it time to worry? It's a fascinating question with Alcaraz. Most of me says, like, long-term, no. Long-term, no, it's not time to worry. If you look at the big picture, it's still a player who won 2 slams last year and went 3-0 against Jannik Sinner. And that's why you came into 2025 feeling all right. This year, it's March. We're about to hit April. Okay, it has not been, and he won a 500. He won Rotterdam. But don't get me wrong, it's been a disappointing 2025 to come out empty-handed, come away from this Sunshine Double empty-handed in Sinner's absence, to lose to Djokovic at the Australian Open the way he lost. Not the fact that he lost, but the way he lost would have been disappointing for Alcaraz. So it has been a rough start to 2025 for sure. In the big picture, everything is still all right. Ultimately, his abilities give him such an edge, such an advantage long-term that I don't really know what we are supposed to be, quote-unquote, worrying about. Are there problems emerging right now? I'm not going to poo-poo this completely. Are there problems right now that are persistent, that are frustrating to watch from Alcaraz's perspective? Has there been stagnation, in some cases, regression in areas. No doubt about it. Okay, how can he be more consistent and not lose to lower ranked players early in big tournaments? What needs to change? The biggest thing, folks, is he needs to be tougher. He needs to be tougher. And I talked about this last year in regards to the pattern in his career where he takes a tough loss, a gut punch loss, and it seems to linger for weeks and weeks and weeks. And in that respect, okay, it's human, but you also want to be able to get better at that as you mature throughout your career. And you learn how to get punched in the face and come back the next week. Same thing in these matches, though. When he starts to get negative, when he starts to get down, when he starts to go, lose some of the confidence, how does he react? And how quickly does he get into that negative zone? Recently, quite quickly. The confidence seems somewhat fickle. More importantly, it's what happens. And he does seem to shut down tactically, and he just tries to hit harder and harder and harder, which if you're playing a guy like David Goffin, who is just a brilliant pace redirector, hitting the ball harder at him is not a solution. It's not an answer. Then there are some things technically that are hurting him early in tournaments. The spot serving is still not very good. And everyone on the tour at this point knows that the best way to play Alcaraz is to viciously attack the return of serve. Go at it. And that has to do with a certain level of respect that opponents have for Alcaraz. I don't want to get into an extended rally against him. I don't want to play him from neutral. I certainly don't want to give him a good look at that +1 strike where he can take control of the point because he is so lethal and he's so deadly. But guess what? It's okay because he's going to miss spots on his serve, and we can try to up the aggression levels by 20% from what we normally do on return. And that's what I'm seeing consistently across the board when players take on Alcaraz. I saw Lehechka do it. I saw Goffin do it. I've seen Roman Safulin do it. I saw Draper do it on the grass courts last year. I saw Djokovic do it in the second set when he couldn't move. And he's like, well, what am I going to do here? I don't want to play any defense, so I'm just going to rip every return. The serve is supposed to be good enough where players don't have that option to redline aggression on the return. But the serve has not been good enough for Alcaraz. I'm going to do a breakdown later in the week where we look at Alcaraz's spot serving. Another thing that was frustrating in the Goffin match is he dominated with the slice serve out wide on the deuce again. The same serve that Djokovic dominated with in Australia. Goffin won like 12 out of 13 points, something like that. Honestly, I think it was worse. I think it was something like 14 out of 16 points when he made a first serve out wide into the deuce side. Pinpoint accuracy from Goffin, but let's face it, David as a server, that's all he's got. You've got to figure out a way to take that away. And again, he just tactically didn't have much of an answer. Try to chip it. Try to maybe add some height and take away some pace. Just hit a high ball off of it. Positionally, cheat on it. Make him beat UT. Just totally sell out for it. I don't see any of... somehow he's still not doing any of these things. And of course, this is another thing that the locker room, if you are a coach, and maybe players don't want to fill their head with studying this stuff so much. Coaches on the tour study this stuff. Where's the best spot to serve against Alcaraz? Everybody's going to be hitting this slider out wide now, constantly, because he's clearly shown that he doesn't have much of an answer for it. So that's again, a somewhat disorganized response to this first question. Before we get into the second comment, I want to tell you about my favorite Monday Match Analysis sponsor of all time, Go Sport. It is my favorite because it is the best tennis bag I have ever owned. I love the fact that it stands up on its own. It has the best organization of any bag because of its customizable shelf system. The design is sleek. It matches any racket, no matter what brand racket you play with. Even if you switch, the bag is going to continue to match. Plus, extreme durability, quality material, always so important. I also personally relate to this brand because when I started Monday Match Analysis, I just recognized a hole in tennis media. Nobody was doing in-depth match breakdowns. So I did what I wanted in terms of what I wasn't getting as a consumer. There were no investors, corporate backing. I didn't have a producer. I just trusted in my vision for the product. And I've gotten to know Chris, the founder of Go Sport, as well. And his story is basically the same. He's from a family of tennis players. They got frustrated with the tennis bag market and just decided to do something about it. Go Sport is a family business that focuses just on tennis bags, and they do it better than the big brands who juggle 70 other different products. So if you're interested, go to gosport.com. That is GEAU sport.com. Link is in the description. And if you use the code GILL10, you will receive 10% off of your order. Next one is from TNUYX. I think Sinner's absence is bad for the tour. We often see that one dominant player will inspire others to get better in order to beat them. And in contrast, the absence of Sinner has made everyone so nervous they're falling to pieces. Even though Sinner's dominance is, quote, boring in the long term, it will benefit tennis. Yeah, the whole debate about is dominance really ever boring? It's a conversation that is always going to surface. Seen it with Novak Djokovic, seen it with Nadal at Roland Garros, seen it with even Iga Swiatek at points in this decade. Not sure how much merit it really has. There's some merit, but it's debatable, to say the least. What I want to say to this comment, I think this excuse is valid for one guy and one guy only. Alexander Zverev has never been number one in the world in his career. Becoming number one is a massive deal for a tennis player. Huge. Suddenly he has this opportunity to do it. Unexpected, kind of handed to him on a silver platter. Combination of some other things going on at the same time for Zverev. But ultimately, that is a major pressure builder. Sinner's absence is a massive pressure builder for Alexander Zverev, who now has this enormous chance to do something that is truly meaningful in the career of a tennis player. It ends there for me. As far as I'm concerned, nobody else gets to say, I lost because I was thinking about Jannik Sinner. It makes no sense for anybody else, including Alcaraz. It would be the same thing as if Sinner got upset or if he got hurt and Alcaraz lost at the Miami Open or at Indian Wells. Would we say, oh, Sinner, it's understandable or it makes sense because Sinner's out? No, we wouldn't say that at all. So the only guy who should be affected negatively by Sinner's absence is Alexander Zverev. That's my opinion. Everybody else, you should be able to focus on yourself and step up to the plate. What I think is happening with the other guys is independent of Jannik Sinner, in my opinion. Next one is from NK Speaks. I've been a huge fan of Medvedev since 2019. Me and my friend and my dad watched him live versus Rublev in the 2019 Cincinnati Open. I even got a ball signed by him. I always liked his non-traditional style and his interviews. Lately, however, it's been so hard to be a Medvedev fan. He seems to be extremely upset-prone guy, which he definitely wasn't a few years ago. His serve has definitely gotten weaker, and he seems to not go for the shots he used to, rather opting to go cross-court more often and be predictable. I guess my questions are this. What tier is Medvedev in at this point? What can he realistically do short-term to get back on track and start winning and making finals of the big events he used to perform well at? Miami is definitely a tournament he should have done very well at, given the conditions. And this loss to Munar wasn't great. So do you think Medvedev might start considering retirement, even though he's relatively young? A lot of questions there. Retirement, no. I don't think that has entered the conversation whatsoever. He's still going deep at big events, not as consistently as he would like. But this is by no means a moment in Medvedev's career where I think he starts to think about that. Not even close. Most tennis players, unless you're like a Djokovic level, unless you're a great, and even for them, it can vary. Most tennis players don't want to go away while they can still make a ton of money and play the biggest events and have an opportunity to win matches. You know, like look at Stan even. So even players who have accomplished a lot in their career usually don't want to go away unless they absolutely either physically they are in pain and they want to stop putting their body through it, or they can't get results anymore, or they don't truly love it anymore. But you don't just go away. If you're a Daniil Medvedev type, you don't just go away for no reason. You know what I love? Who said it recently? Who said it? They had a great line. Oh, I think it was Sloane. Yeah, it was Sloane Stephens. Sloane said, all these people on the internet who tell me I should retire, if your job was still paying you millions of dollars, would you quit your job? And it's like, all right, Sloane, fair enough. When you put it that way, you would not quit your job if it still paid you millions of dollars, generally. Okay. Anyway, let's get to the better parts of this comment. What tier is Medvedev in at this point? Look, he's clearly not tier 1, even on hard court. That's the alarming thing, right? For many, many years, it was, all right, on hard court, he's tier 1. Clay, grass, we can have that conversation, but clearly not at this point. Now, what tier is he in exactly? I was thinking about it for a sec, and it's so convoluted right now and unclear to me that I don't really want to do tiers at the moment. I need some dust to settle because, again, with Sinner's absence, complicates things. With Zverev's struggles, complicates things. Where is Draper right now? Where is Djokovic right now? There's not a lot of clarity if we're going to do tiers at the moment. So let's refrain from that and just say that Medvedev is not tier 1, even in his best conditions, which is saying something. What can he realistically do short term to get back on track and start winning and making finals at events he used to perform well at? He's tried a lot of stuff. The question with this Miami thing will be, was it the lower back? Is that why the serve looked so bad? You know, he maxed out at 122 miles per hour. I do think in some defensive situations, he wasn't necessarily throwing his body at balls that he ordinarily would. He didn't really want to, lunge at the ball when he was at the end of his range. So I think the low back stuff might have played a role in the Munar loss, but you also saw a lot of stuff that's been consistent for Medvedev in terms of having massive finishing issues. This is what happened against Munar. Jaume Munar, who never gets tired of running, never takes unnecessary risk on defense, gets after every ball and recovers hard. Munar is not crazy fast, but all of that stuff makes it seem like he's crazy fast because he gains speed with his hustle. Medvedev, kind of low speed on the drive. We know that. No forehand drop shot. No net rushing. What's the plan here? How do we finish against a great defender in Jaume Munar? We struggle to finish. Okay, now what then? Instead of just digging in and challenging Munar to a war of attrition, going toe-to-toe, if you're Daniil Medvedev and saying, I am more physical than you, he doesn't do that anymore. He tries to rev up his ground stroke speeds. and he gets a little bit inconsistent. He calls the supervisor out at the 2-5 changeover to complain about the balls. The balls continue to be in his head. It's a massive issue. He has been tinkering with his equipment constantly in the last 2 years. This is a player who doesn't have confidence. This is a player in crisis. This is a player who is losing something in certain areas, serve, physicality, desperately trying to make up for it in other areas and running into some technical limitations. You can ask me here, and I'm not trying to be super doomy and gloomy with Medvedev, but like you can ask me here, what's the short-term solution? If I had an easy short-term solution, I wouldn't have predicted him number 9 at the start of this year. No, I think that what Medvedev has run into is somewhat of a dilemma. And he might figure something out. He might find a way to serve better. He might find a way to dig in physically more, or to find his confidence again at a certain point in time. But I don't have an answer for it. What is the blueprint for Daniil Medvedev post-prime for him to get back to tier 1? Because the adaptation that we saw Djokovic undergo, Nadal, Federer to an extent, that adaptation is not going to be easy for Daniil. It just won't. Is there anything else on the Munar match that I wanted to... Oh, let me just say this with Medvedev. One of the things that's concerning. There was a point in time where you felt like nobody could beat him from the back of the court. If you're going to play Daniil from the baseline, he's going to get the better of you. Unless maybe you're Novak, but even Novak was getting into these 50-50 wars with Medvedev when he was trying to beat him from the back. It was the guys with a unique skill set that found a way through his defense with creativity, with a lot of, serve and volley, net rushing and drop shotting more generally, extreme angles. A special weapon like the Nadal forehand was good enough to kind of find its way through Medvedev. If you didn't have that, you were toast, right? So Nick Kyrgios gave him some troubles. Hurkacz, who just served big, came in right away against Medvedev. Hurkacz gave him some troubles. Tsitsipas figured out at a certain point in the head-to-head that he had to just start coming in right away. Had some success. Dimitrov with the slice backhand and the net rushing and the speed is a tough matchup for Medvedev. Even like de Minaur has combined speed and net rushing to pose some problems. Now you have in Lerner Tien and Jaume Munar, you have lower-powered players beating Daniil from the baseline because they are actually tougher than him in rallies. And that is kind of new. Next one from Sopita. Indian Wells semifinalist out of Miami second round. Coincidence? No, not a coincidence, but I do think it's more circumstantial than it is the kind of cliche commentator's narrative that we're going to end up hearing as a result of this. Like, oh, the transition is so difficult. It's so hard. I don't discount that. I'm not denying that, but look at the history. The history is the best players in the world do well at both, often back-to-back. Look at what Medvedev, Alcaraz, and Sinner have done in the last, and Yannick's career trajectory has been a little bit different, but in the last 3 years, look at what Alcaraz and Medvedev have done over the course of the Sunshine Double. They've gone deep both. Look at Djokovic throughout his career in his hardcourt prime. Won it 3 times in a row. Federer, he had some great Sunshine Doubles. Nadal had some great Sunshine Doubles, although he actually really didn't like the conditions in Miami, oddly. Let's get back on track here. I don't think that we saw all 4 Indian Wells semifinalists lose early in Miami because it's just this incredibly tough transition. And by the way, I've always felt that Madrid-Rome is harder with the altitude change, and back in the day when it was no days off, condensed 56-player draws with in the 1 week format. So you're playing every day, all tough matches, and you don't get that big break after the event, right? These guys played on Friday and Saturday after Indian Wells. They got 4 days off. And you're going to tell me that this is somehow harder than Miami to Monte Carlo or Madrid to Rome? I think even back in the day, Canada to Cincy. The reason the Sunshine Double has this extra sort of shine to it is because, well, for a time, Miami Open was known as the Fifth Slam. Larry Ellison and Indian Wells has kind of wrestled that title away. At one point, it stood out because it had that expanded format. That's no longer novelty. But as much as we make out the Sunshine Double to be a thing unto itself, it's not like it's the most difficult thing to do in tennis. It's not the Channel Slam. I think the reason you see Medvedev lose to Munar and Alcaraz lose to Goffin and Rune lose to Opelka and Draper lose to Menchik is circumstantial when it comes to the state of Daniil Medvedev, the state of Carlos Alcaraz. Rune got a tough draw in Opelka. Draper also got a very tough draw in Menchik, who served him off the court. And for Jack, you give him a little bit more grace because he did win his first Masters 1000 title a few days before. So not a coincidence, but it's not about how tough the transition is. We have seen players conquer that transition in the past. Next one is from Juan. Hey, Gill, Carlito seems lost on court. It seems like he is looking more often at his camp after every point to try and find an answer. He seems mentally stressed all the time, not having fun on court as he previously did. Confidence seems really low at the moment. What do you think is going on with him? What possible solutions does he need to find now that the clay swing is starting and he can gain momentum really quickly? Thanks as always for the content. So there's a lot of overlap here with the first comment as well. There are a couple of points that I guess I wanted to make that I didn't, so I'll get to them now. I still want to see lockdown mode Carlos Alcaraz. To me, the fastest player in the world should have lockdown mode. No miss, no mistake. The fact that he doesn't have that gear, which I don't think that he should necessarily regularly rely on, but the fact that there's no, all right, I need some confidence, I need some rhythm, let's see if my opponent might give me some mistakes. Let's try to make sure that I'm buttoned up here and mistake free. The fact that the fastest player in the world doesn't have that, to me, doesn't make much sense. There were portions of that match against Goffin where it's like, okay, it's 15-30, third set. You have an opportunity here to get back in the match. He missed a second serve return, down 4-3, up 15-30 in a return game. Then at 30-all, had a comfortable mid-court forehand that he sprayed wide. And these are the big point mistakes that you cannot have. You are going to lose matches if you make those big point mistakes. And by the way, this was a match, like, I can't recall Alcaraz's touch being so off ever. The drop shots, the volleys, like, he had no touch against Goffin. So all the more reason to just simplify. Ultra disciplined, take away some of the excitement, take away the high risk game style, just go lockdown mode. This is not like a solution to playing incredible and never losing over the course of the clay swing. It's just something that I still think he should develop, and it will help him in these tough, stressful moments to be a little bit more programmed, to have something to go to. And guess what? Have a way to change what you're doing. Because that is what often has felt like is lacking when things start going the wrong direction for Alcaraz, is a lot of it is just once it starts going downhill, it snowballs and it never recovers because there's never this shift in play. And there's just panic, negativity, and anxiety. The other thing is just favorite psychology for Alcaraz. How good is he at withstanding the pressure that comes with being a favorite? Because he certainly has played big matches well in his career. He has certainly played big points well in his career. But is that because he handled the pressure well? Or is that because he didn't feel the pressure in that particular situation? He was either young enough, or circumstantially, he was able to play the underdog role in his head enough where he didn't actually feel the pressure, which we sometimes see with young players. Rune, when he first break through in 2022 and had that run at the Masters 1000, he didn't feel any pressure that week. He wasn't expected to do it. There were no expectations. He just did it. He was young. He didn't know where he was. He was a rocket ship. There was no pressure. Federer, 2017, comes off the knee surgery. Some of the best tennis he's ever played in his career, possibly the best. Didn't feel any pressure. Why? Wasn't expecting anything out of himself. That doesn't last, though. You cannot replicate that. And something that I've also noticed for Alcaraz, something that he needs to look at just psychologically, is the freewheeling air of invincibility that comes with youth. That goes away. And what does he have when that goes away? Because if I think about even the slams that he's won, I mean, not an overwhelming favorite in any of the four. Not, U.S. Open when he didn't have any. And then there was Wimbledon against Djokovic, was not supposed to win. Djokovic was supposed to win. Novak was the favorite. Last year, Roland Garros coming in only one title in like a 6-month period from Wimbledon 2023 to Roland Garros 2024 and tons of arm issues. There was not a ton of expectation around Alcaraz. Wins Roland Garros. Wimbledon last year, maybe that's the best argument you can make, that Alcaraz comes into a slam as a favorite and he wins it. Even though surface-wise at Wimbledon, it still felt like somewhat of a bonus for him. That will change now that he's got two. But anyway, look at the Djokovic-Alcaraz rivalry. Underdog dominant. If you think about the narratives and the conditions coming into each and every Djokovic-Alcaraz match, the underdog has won that head-to-head over and over and over again. And for me, that has had more to do with Alcaraz's performance than anything else, other than the Olympics. Which is a match I thought Alcaraz played pretty well. Djokovic was just even better. All right, that's enough food for thought with the Alcaraz stuff. Let's go to Lindsay, who is a member. Thank you for being a member. You can hit the join button, $2 a month to contribute to the channel. It's greatly appreciated. You mentioned briefly in your lawsuit video that the tours have agreed to standardize and improve, hopefully, the balls. Can you say any more about that? I hadn't heard the news. Does that mean all brands will agree to one set of specs and quality of raw materials, etc.? Do you know how much variation there will be across surfaces in majors versus regular tour events, etc.? Sure, yeah. This news went kind of under the radar. So Ross Hutchins, who's high up with the ATP, he's in charge of, I don't want to mistitle him, but one of the big bosses at the ATP, his name is Ross Hutchins. He has explained what the plan is for the ATP, which is to intervene when the ball tournament deals expire. The ATP is actually coming in and taking over those deals to ensure that the ball is standardized across each swing. So the ATP actually briefly considered developing their own ball to kind of take it in-house. And then I don't know if they were going to just do brand stenciling on it or what. Then they realized that was too tough and they decided that wasn't the play. So now I have the quote up here. Okay, here's the quote from Ross Hutchins. The ATP will do the negotiations and oversee the development of the ball with the manufacturers to get the best balls for each swing. The process began this year, and he said that as each deal ended between individual tournaments and manufacturers, the ATP would fold those tournaments into its centralized process. 5 more will be added next year, and by 2026, they will control more than 75% of the tournaments, with 2029 as the target date for full alignment where we control everything. So there you go. It's going to take some time for some of these deals to expire, but as soon as they expire, the ATP is stepping in and making sure that there's standardization. I don't know what the specifics are of the financials there, but there you have it. Like, the ATP is fixing it. They are trying to get the WTA to work in lockstep with them. The WTA, I'm sure, will probably follow, but the slams are a wild card. They operate on their own. So there's going to have to be some, collaboration there. I think at some point, if you want full standardization across the swings in regards to the lead up to majors. Next one from Ryan. Hey, Gill, I heard Darren Cahill on a podcast recently talk about the great tennis coaches shouldn't spend more than 3 or 4 years with the player because they have already taught them all they can. What do you think about that mindset? And could Carlos benefit from a new coaching team? Love your content. Keep it up. Really, really interesting. I do think that coaches should constantly be trying to learn new things. I think most great coaches do that. I'm sure Darren does that as well. But I also understand what he's saying, that big picture, philosophically, you are going to sort of transfer a large percentage of what you have to offer, to your player over the course of a 3 or 4 year period. We've seen a couple of different approaches. We've seen consultants come in and offer up some different stuff or some new stuff to players. I just don't think it's a universal rule of how long a coach should stay with the player, because we've seen long partnerships work out really, really well. Marian Vida was more than 3-4 years. Nadal's coaching staff was with him more than, other than Uncle Tony, you even had, what's his name? I'm blanking on, Francisco Roig was longer than 3 or 4 years. Ferrero's getting a lot of heat right now. I understand why. Because the upward trajectory hasn't been there. There have been some frustrating losses. There have been some stagnations in certain areas. And tactically, it's looked pretty rough at times. But at the end of the day, that is Alcaraz's structure and his support system. It goes a lot deeper than tactics and coaching. And while I think at a certain point, if things don't improve, you think about taking some risk and changing things up, even if it's uncomfortable. I don't think we're at that point with Alcaraz right now. Again, in the bigger picture, he won 2 slams last year. He went 3-0 against Sinner last year. He's number 3 in the world. He is 21 going to turn 22. You don't need to tear up your entire support system if you're Carlos Alcaraz right now. I don't think that's I don't think that's necessarily the way forward. This next one is from Sammy. Hi, Gil. First of all, thanks for all the great content. I wanted to ask you some big picture questions about Draper. Seeing him play at Indian Wells got me wondering why he hasn't had any significant results on clay yet. To me, it seems his game would translate quite well to clay, or is there something holding him back? Also, how high do you think his ceiling is? Assuming he manages to stay healthy and improve his fitness, do you think he can challenge Sinner and Alcaraz for slams? And do you see him as a future slam/multi-slam winner? If you were to pick the surface, where do you think he has the highest chance? And who do you currently see more likely winning a slam first, him or Zverev? Why hasn't Draper had success on clay? The first answer is that he hasn't really played much at all on clay, so he is incredibly inexperienced. The other thing I'll mention is that he started working with Wayne Ferreira during clay court season a year ago, and Wayne had him really getting out of his comfort zone, playing a brand of attacking tennis that probably didn't suit the clay courts all that well, but I'm sure Jack and Wayne were looking at it as a long-term investment that may have hurt his results at the time. I don't think he's comfortable moving on clay, and that's just something that will come with experience. But I get it, heavy RPM, forehand player, good physicality, really consistent from the back of the court. There are a lot of good clay court qualities to Jack. So in that sense, if he gets comfortable on the surface, he should be able to win on it. How high do you think his ceiling is? Yeah. I've always felt like Draper checks so many boxes. The fact that the forehand is developed as a weapon, technically speaking, that to me was the last thing he needed to conquer. Technically, to kind of round out his skill set. And he's done that. If he can stay healthy, the physical side is good, and he can play big matches well, mentally, because the nerve management has also been a steep learning curve for him, although he had some big wins early in his career against top players in big stadiums. So he hasn't had horrible stage fright, but it's been problematic at times for him. He gets all of these things developing as they have in a continued positive direction. And he's going to be right up there. He's going to be in the mix. He's going to be a top player. I expect him to contend for slams consistently. I expect him to win majors. Yeah, absolutely. He's got everything he needs. From Antoni. In light of the Rybakina case, as well as the seemingly very good and successful partnership between Mira Andreeva and Conchita Martinez, I keep wondering why there seems to be a glaring lack of female coaches on the tour, especially on the women's side. Wouldn't that, among other things, work towards creating safer spaces for women? Side note, if you get a chance, do watch Julie Keeps Quiet. Thanks, and always look forward to new. Yeah, I still need to watch that. Thanks for the reminder on Julie Keeps Quiet. That is one of the things that is exciting about Mira Andreeva, and it shouldn't be. This shouldn't even be a talking point, but it's a real talking point. The fact that she has a coach in there who has been there before, knows what it's like to be in Mira's shoes, and can guide her as a mentor, fully professional, fully qualified, no overdependence, no crossing of lines. We're talking about a teenager in Mira Andreeva who seems to have the balance of support system and tennis coach down pat. And so often those lines are blurred in ways that are unhealthy for the player. It's sad. As far as getting more females into coaches as a way to sort of mitigate that problem, I think to a certain extent that would help. There is an incredible imbalance of male and female in coaching. Unbelievable imbalance. I remember at the United Cup a couple years ago, combined event, ATP WTA, there was one female coach. It was Croatia. Eva Majoli was the only female coach. This year, I think there were maybe two, maybe three. But that's one kind of glaring window into just how lopsided it is. You can do certain things, like Tennis Australia, I know, introduced a program a couple years ago to try to actively fix it, creating pensions, training programs for female coaches, whether it be kind of funding their training. I don't know the specifics of it, but they may have been funding the training for female coaches via like a grant system as a way to try to shift the balance a little bit, but long way to go. Programs like that will help long term, but it is shocking to see how few women have female coaches. And obviously men can too. I mean, Andy Murray did, famous example, Emil Mauresmo. But it's more surprising to see the imbalance on the women's side for obvious reasons. Last one from JS. Hey, Gill, if you wanted to rebuild your serve and you had a tennis court and a basket of balls to yourself for a week with nothing else to do, which pro has the service motion you would study and try to emulate? So my serve, I think when I was really young, I think I tried to make it look like Federer, a platform serve. Then I think over the years, it started to look a lot more like Tommy Paul, Dominic Thiem. I'm working right now on potentially lowering the toss a little bit and landing more on balance. I saw on video that I actually don't land as nicely as I need to be, where I'm sort of falling to my left like Tsitsipas used to do. But if I could have anyone's serve technique right now on tour, this just gives me a chance to finish off this mailbag with a take. Other than Nick Kyrgios, let's throw him aside. In my opinion, the best serve technique on tour, most smooth, fluid, powerful, sound serve technique on tour belongs to one Jakub Menchik. If I could have anybody's serve technique right now on the snap of a finger, it would be Jakub Menchik's serve technique. And I'll leave you with that. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.